All right, great. So just by way of sort of housekeeping, if you look at your screen on the left-hand side, there's a couple of things I want you to see. One is a box that says discussion, and in that I put the web address. So if you want to make changes, as you'll see at the end, to your investments or to how much you contribute or your beneficiaries, you do that at a website, which is rmi401k.com. And we can also chat inside this. So if you have a question as I'm going along, you don't want to speak out on it, you can just type in the question and we'll all get a chance to see that and answer it. And then in the bottom left-hand corner in the file share box, I put the highlight sheet. So we're going to talk a lot about, eligibility and match and different things like that. It's all in this document. If you want to just click on that, you can upload it to your computer. And it also has all of the contact information. So if you want to reach out to me via email or you want to call in, you have a question, or you want to know what web address to go to, et cetera, it's all on there. So let's just kind of get started here. I don't see this meeting being a really long one. But since we've got everybody on, we want to talk about a couple things, not just the changes that are coming up, but also a couple of general concepts about 401k for those of you that are new to it that I think will be very helpful. So first of all, what is changing? So the big news is there's going to be a matching contribution that's in your 401k plan. So if you think about a 401k as just a retirement savings account, if I want to save money for vacation, I'm going to tell my bank, take some money out of my checking account, put it in my savings account. If I'm going to save money for retirement, I'm going to tell my employer to take some money out of my check and put it in my retirement savings account or 401k. And in your case, the big news is that your company is now going to make a contribution on your behalf. So as you stick money in, they're also going to add to your account for you. Essentially, it's a way to get a few $1,000s of free money is what it really comes down to. So the way the match is going to work is there's going to be 100% match of the first 3% of your compensation that you contribute to the plan. So in other words, if you made $1,000, if you stuck $30 in the plan, which is 3%, they would also stick $30 in the plan. So that match has a cap of $2,000 annually. So what does that mean? It means that putting in 3% is a no-brainer contribution where they're essentially doubling the money that you're putting in there. The match has something called a vesting schedule, so I want to talk about that really quick. So all of the money that you contribute to the plan is always your money. The matching contribution that your employer puts in the plan becomes yours over time, and we call that vesting. In your case, the vesting schedule is what we call a 5-year vesting schedule. The good news about it is that it goes from your original date of hire, not from the date that you're starting this match, not from the date that you started the plan, not from the date that you guys started working with resource management, but from each individual's original date of hire. So, and the way that it works, we call it a 5-year graded vesting schedule. It just means that after 1 year of service, you're 20% vested. After 2 years of service, you're 40% vested. After 3 years of service, you're 60% vested, and so on. After 5 years of service, you're 100% vested. So if you've been with the company 5 years, you're 100% vested in this match. If you've been with the company 3 years right now, so far, you're 60% vested. If you stay a couple more years, you'll be 100% vested. It just means when you leave, you'll take all the money you contributed with any of its earnings, and then once you're vested, you'll take all of that match with any of its earnings. So there might be some questions on the vesting schedule, so if you have some, make sure you chat those in. Eligibility is staying the same. 18, you have to be 18 years old, and you're eligible 1 month after you're employed. And then the plan has a feature called automatic enrollment. And automatic enrollment just means that instead of requiring you to go online and sign up, you're automatically signed up for 3% so that you can get that full match unless you go online and opt out. So unless you go to RMI 401k and choose not to be in the plan, you're automatically in the plan. All right. I want to talk about three general concepts of 401ks. You know, when I think about having done this now for over 20 years and seeing people that have big balances and other people. Did we have a question? Seeing people that have big balances compared to those that don't, there's really three things that I see people do that they, you know, if you do these three things, you end up with a really good balance. And so I'm just going to take 10 minutes and kind of try to show you what those are. We're going to do that by looking at a fictitious illustration for a fake participant named Krista. And so the thing to remember here, and if you read the disclosures on the bottom of this slide, is that you're not Krista. So this isn't meant to be specific advice for you. It's not tax or legal advice. This is just meant to help teach three basic concepts. Krista's 25 years old, so you might be older or younger than she is. Krista earns $16.83 an hour. She works full-time. So that's $35,000 a year. She gets raises on average of 3.2% a year, which is the long-term average in the U.S. She works for Intermountain Lock and Security, so she gets your match, 100% match of the first 3% of your pay, not to exceed $2,000 annually. And so she decides to sign up for 3% of her pay because it's a no-brainer, or in her case, maybe she just gets auto-enrolled at 3%. For her, that comes to about $44 per paycheck. And then the last thing here is that she's going to earn 7% average return. Now, again, if you think about, you know, this retirement savings account idea, what we're saying is in between the time you put money in the plan and Intermountain Lock and Security now puts money in the plan with you, in between that time and the time you take it out someday in retirement, the money's going to be invested. And you know, the upside for an investment is that we expect that over a long period of time, it's going to earn a lot more interest than just sticking the money in the bank. The downside is we also expect it to go up and down in value. It's not just going to take a straight path and earn 7%. So that's what I did for Krista here. Is I had her get 7% average return, and but it kind of goes up and down. So the three things that I want you to learn, the four things are this. Number one, small amounts of money saved over a long period of time really add up. In Krista's case, remember, she was doing $44 a payroll. And, of course, she was getting her match now, which is a big deal. You'll see here in a minute. In the blue part of this chart, that shows what happens if she starts at age 25 and saves 3% for her whole life and gets the match that she has at Intermountain. She ends up with $678,000, which is probably more than most people would think she would end up with, given the amount that she's saving each payroll. Then the second thing I want you to learn is starting early makes a really, really big difference, a bigger difference probably than you think. The only difference between the blue chart, where she ends up with $678,000, and the orange chart, where she ends up with $390,000, is that on the orange chart, she waits till she's 35 years old before she starts. That's the only difference. Other than that, she still gets the same match. She still puts in 3%. She still gets the same return. So, you know, sometimes I say that and people get all bummed out because they haven't started and they're over age 25 or even over age 35. So the main thing I would stress is that the soonest you can start is today. So get going, because starting early makes a big difference. The second thing I want you to understand is just how valuable this match is. So there's a statistic that I read recently published by Vanguard that said that 53% of companies that employ fewer than 100 employees do not offer a 401k plan. So in other words, if you work for a small business, there's a good chance you may not have a retirement plan. And then on top of that, out of the people that do offer it, not all of them offer a match. And this matching contribution you're getting now is a really big deal. How big a deal? So if you look at this chart, on the far left-hand side, the little blue bar shows how much Krista contributes over the course of her life, $95,000 we'll call it. So over a 42-year period, she sticks in $95,000. The match that she gets is $95,000. And then the money grows. So when we said that she ends up with 600 and whatever it was, 80,000 bucks, half of it came from the money she contributed in the growth, and half of it came from the matching contribution in the growth. Now, there's no way Krista thought, hey, this match that I get in my 401k is going to be worth $339,000 to me someday. But the reality is that it is for her, in her case. So I guess that's the part I really want to stress, is just how big a deal adding match like this is. In her case, doubles her, retirement savings someday, and it turns out to be hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I think it's great that you guys are getting that, and you always want to work for some place that offers a matching contribution. All right, last slide I want to show you is that 3% is not enough. So I tell people, save as much as your employer will match, which in your case is 3%, but try to save at least 10% of your income as soon as you can. And in Krista's case, my assumption was she couldn't afford to save more than 3% when she started. So what I did with the blue bar here, the blue chart, compared to the orange is the one we've been looking at this whole time. That's just 3% with her match. On the blue, what she does is she starts at 3%, but then she raises it by 1% per year until she gets to 10% of her pay. So it takes her about 7 years until she gets all the way to 10%. But what we find out is that you won't miss the 1%. In her case, that's like 12 to 15 bucks a paycheck. She doesn't feel the 1% while she's increasing it each year. But she definitely notices it when she's at retirement. She ends up with 1.2, so $1,246,000 instead of $678,000. And so, inside the record-keeping system that we have right now, when you log into RMI401k.com, there's actually a spot in there for you to sign up to have this automatically done. So I'm going to start at 3%, but I want it to raise my contribution by 1% each year till I get to 10, or 1% every 6 months till I get to 10, or whatever you think you could afford. But, it's a big deal. And by the way, sometimes people look at this and think, well, 678 is plenty. Why would I need 1.2 million? The problem is something we call inflation. So that's what this chart doesn't show, is that how much will stuff cost Krista 42 years from now? And the answer is a lot. You've probably heard someone say that they recently paid, like a grandparent say, I just paid more for my last car than I paid for my first house. Or you find out somebody bought a house for $25,000 or $50,000 or $75,000. That's inflation. So you really do need to target that more growth. All right, 3 quick things and then I'm done. The first is that sometimes people don't know this, but you get to decide how you want your contributions to be taxed. So the money that you put in the plan, you can put in the plan pre-tax. In other words, get a tax deduction for it now, and then pay taxes on it when you take it out in retirement. Or you can put it, and we call that traditional, or you could put it in after tax, no tax deduction today, but get it out tax-free at retirement. We call that Roth. And so I'm just going to jump back to this chart of Krista really quick and talk about that. If she does traditional, then the little blue bar, the $95,000 she puts in the plan, goes in before taxes. The orange bar, which is the matching contribution, that's always before taxes, and then the money grows. So if she does traditional pre-tax, then her whole $678,000 is taxable at retirement. Now, she's not going to take out $670,000 probably all at once. She'll probably take out like $2,500 or something like that per month. And when she does, it's going to be taxed to her as if she earned it at a job in retirement. If she does Roth contributions, so if she chooses to have her money go in after tax, and she wouldn't get a tax deduction for the $95,000 when she was sticking it in. The match, by the way, whether you do Roth or traditional, is always pre-tax. The money will grow, and she'll end up with $339,000 tax-free. That whole big blue bar, if she does Roth, she puts in her money after tax, it grows, and she gets all that growth out tax-free. The big orange bar, which represents the match, is always going to be taxable. So that's Roth and traditional. If you want to learn more about Roth and traditional, I put a URL underneath these eggs to a class that you can look at which is benefitclasses.adobeconnect.com/traditional-v-Roth. It just looks at traditional versus Roth. You can also shoot an email off to us, or, we want to help as much as we can. In the end, it's mostly about how much you pay in taxes today. The lower your current tax rate, the more you may want to consider Roth and pay your taxes today and get it out tax-free. The higher your current tax rates, the more you may want to consider traditional and get a tax deduction today. Now, before I jump off of that slide, the default, if you get automatically enrolled at 3%, the default is traditional. It's pre-tax. Okay, investments. So you may or may not know this. If you're already in the plan or if you're not already in the plan, you can change your investments anytime you want. And so sometimes people get worried about managing their own investments. Remember, we said that Krista averages 7% return, and so in between the time she sticks the money in and the time she takes it out, it's invested. You have to choose those investments. And I think there's really two things. If you understand these two concepts, you can do a really good job yourself. Those two things are what we call diversification and suitability. Diversification is pretty easy to understand. It just means I'm going to have a mix of investments. Suitability is a little harder. It means I'm going to have a mix that's right for me. And so what do we mean by that? So what we mean by right for me is this. The older you are and the bigger your balance, the more conservative you may want your mix to be. The younger you are and the smaller your balance, the more aggressive you may want your mix to be. So I think that's kind of easy to understand. If you think about Krista, if she's 65 years old, she's got 2 years till retirement, she has $600,000 in her account. If she has an aggressive mix of investments and those investments go down in value a lot, then number one, she's going to lose a lot of dollars. And number two, she's only got a few years to recover from it. And so for someone that's older and with a bigger balance, we would say that we'd want her to have a little bit more conservative mix. In your plan, we have some funds that are known as the target date funds. And so in our case, we call them the Vanguard target date funds. I'm going to hurry and just share my screen and show you. I did just pull up a little research site. If you just search Vanguard, in this case, we're going to look at the Vanguard Target Retirement 2045 Fund. What this means is, and by the way, so target retirement means that we're telling Vanguard, make a mix for us, and the 2045 means it's the date that we expect that we would be retiring. So this will be for someone who's around age 40. They're going to hit retirement around age 2040, around the year 2045. And so they'd go in the Vanguard Target Retirement 2045 Fund. You know, what would happen when that happens? Well, if you look on here, you find out that even though all your money's going into this one account, Vanguard then is breaking it up, and about 53% going in U.S. stocks, about 34% going in international stocks, and the rest is not going in stocks. The closer you get to retirement, the more conservative they make your mix. The further you are from retirement, the more aggressive they make your mix. So one way to get a diversified, suitable portfolio of investments is just to use the target date fund that corresponds to your age. And that's the default. So if you take no action at all, you're automatically signed up for 3% of your pay. We're going to put it in pre-tax, what we call traditional, which you've already learned about, and it's going to go into a target date fund that corresponds to your age. Now, of course, you can log into rmi401k.com anytime you want and change your investment mix. Okay, last thing, and then we're totally done. And that's the downside to 401k. So we've talked about all the upside. There's this great match. You know, you can save a lot of money over a long period of time. The downside is getting your money out. So while you're still employed, you cannot take your money out of the plan. The exceptions to that are you have to be 59 and a half years old, or you have to take what's called a hardship withdrawal or a 401k loan. Now, those are ways that you can get it out, but the point is it's not as easy to get it out as if you just go down to your bank. What about if you separate from service? So what if you ever left Intermountain or maybe a previous employer that had a plan? You have 4 choices. You can leave the money in the plan, You can roll it over to your next 401k or transfer it to your next plan. So if you have a balance in an old plan and you want to move it to this one, you can. You can also move it to an IRA or an individual retirement account. Those three I consider to be good choices because in all of those cases, there's no taxes, there's no penalties, and the money keeps growing. The fourth one is not a good choice, and that is that you can cash it out. And this is a huge problem in the United States. It's one of the three most common mistakes people make in their 401k. And that is they work at a great employer like Intermountain, and they get this new match, and they save up a little bit of money. And then I'm just going to mute our...
All guests have been muted. You can unmute your line by pressing *6.
Sorry, we were getting a little background noise there, so I muted everybody, but you can hit *6 to unmute. This is our last slide anyway, but cashing out is one of the most common mistakes that people make. And the biggest problem with it is, number one, you pay taxes when you cash it out. Number two, you pay a tax penalty of 10% if you're not at least 59 and a half years old when you cash it out. But the biggest problem is it stops the growth. If you remember back to that slide of Krista, the difference it made when she started at age 35 compared to 25, that'd be the same if she started at 25 and she cashed it out at 35 and restarted. She'd get a few $1,000s, but she'd restart and it would cost her literally $300,000 in her retirement. So, if you want to make changes, you're going to go to rmi401k.com. The new match investing starts on August 1st, 2019. So if you're already enrolled in the plan, you're just going to start seeing match get added to your plan, which is awesome. Free money for everybody. Great news. If you're not currently enrolled in the plan, you want to try to get enrolled if you can here before the end of the month. Again, you do that at rmi401k.com. And if you have any questions for us, the contact information you need is on the highlight sheet. So if you go to the file share box and just download that, and you can download the highlight sheet and everything whether or not you're watching this live or you're watching the recorded version of it. So, are there any questions out there? Anybody want to ask any questions? You can hit *6 to unmute. You can also chat it in the discussion box.
I got a question.
Okay.
10% the max you can put in?
Oh, that's a great question. No, it's not. That's just a number that I've sort of arbitrarily chosen as a goal to try to help people save more. But you can actually contribute $19,000 if you're under age 50 and $25,000 if you're 50 or older. And it doesn't matter what percentage that is. That could be 90% of your pay or whatever, and you'd still be able to do it.
Thank you.
Great question. Along those lines, while some of you may be thinking of other questions, if you have them, again, you can hit *6 to unmute. Sometimes I get asked, well, can I stick in $19,000 Roth and $19,000 traditional? You know, the answer is that $19,000 and $25,000 limits I talked about, that's total between Roth and traditional. And by the way, if you want to save, let's say you wanted to save 10% of your pay, can you do both Roth and traditional? The answer is yes. You could do 5% traditional, 5% Roth, or break it up however you want. No matter what no matter what kind of taxation you choose, your employer is still going to match it. So if you do 3% Roth, you're still going to get a 3% match. That match will always be pre-tax. If you did 3% Roth and 3% traditional, you're still going to get the 3% match. So, any other questions out there? Yeah, I'm going to stop our recording.